Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited. It's rare that I get this excited. And you know, at times, I, Elias Makos, can get excited for guests on the show. But today, ladies and gentlemen, something very special. The one and only, Vassy Kapelos, you hear on CJAD every day at noon. Well, lo and behold, she's moseyed on down from Ottawa. And, you know, they're boring in Ottawa. It's boring in Ottawa.
I mean, I don't want to slag Ottawa. It's
of course.
You know, I love where I live. But,
don't worry, you're not broadcasting
Montreal's
there.
Pretty exciting.
You can whisper. We're not broadcasting in Ottawa right now. Although I know we have Ottawa listeners, so maybe okay, easy now. Vassy, welcome to Montreal.
Thank you.
For the debate, le débat ce soir.
Oui.
Okay, first things first. Let's just tackle this. The news came in this morning, the Green Party getting the boot. And I want to know if you felt it was coming, that eventually they'd get down to this decision, or are you surprised that this came at this hour?
I'm only surprised because the debate commission is this kind of odd thing that I don't really understand rhyme or reason or rationale at any point. So I think it makes sense that this was the decision. I did not know if they would actually follow through with it. I got a text late last night from somebody who said, I was just at this party and I heard they're getting the boot. And so we started making calls and no one would confirm it. And then this morning came the announcement. Look, if you don't, they set out rules. If you don't meet the rules, well, then that's incumbent on the commission to do something about it. Like, what's the point of having rules otherwise?
But the thing is, they weren't meeting those rules a while back. You know, so why? Oh, now you realize they weren't fulfilling the rules? Didn't you know a week ago? I mean, because we all knew. We
also knew what time the Habs game was, and they decided this late to make a switch there too. They're not the most responsive of government bureaucracies, I guess.
And that's the thing, because if you have to think about, it's not a playoff game that came out of nowhere. This is a game that's on the schedule. And I said this morning, there's only one thing now that really draws live TV audiences guaranteed, and it's sports. So you put yourself...
Or breaking news.
Of course.
Two things, yeah.
Absolutely. And why would you put this up against the one item in Quebec for the French debate? Now, if you flip it, it's another story. Lots of questions about the debate commission. But let's get down to the nitty gritty. And we were talking about this because two Greeks in the same room, it's just a gabfest, right? So
no silence. Yeah.
No silence, right? But I guess what we should be talking about is, what is this election about? And the way I put it was kind of class warfare. Haves versus have-nots. Housing haves versus whatever the opposite is. You know, old versus young. I saw the latest abacus said the 18 to 29 is the spot where conservatives lead. How do you define it, what this election's about?
I think it's a great way that you put it. I think that the divisions that exist in our country right now are only amplified through the lenses with which people are looking at this election. So when you talk about class, for example, and in particular, I think the way that you isolated the ability to own a home is one of the biggest dividing lines. If you own a home and you have a pension, at this point in time, overwhelmingly, you are supporting the Liberals, and primarily because you are very concerned about the threat Donald Trump poses, both to the economy and our sovereignty. If you are younger and you do not own a home and you do not have a pension, and even you may be looking for work, and I should add, you're a man versus an older woman, you are overwhelmingly supporting the Conservatives and feel as though, you know, you want change from the status quo that exists. And then you can even extrapolate it further. Urban versus rural, huge divides. Urban for Liberals, rural for Conservatives. East versus West, another huge divide. Liberals versus Conservatives.
The geography thing too, right?
Yes.
Added into the mix.
Yeah.
We've got so many divisions on certain lines in this country.
It's going to be a big job for whoever wins to mend those.
Because of all those divisions, let me ask you this question. And you know, it's a little bit chillier than we thought it would be in Montreal. And let's say you forgot to bring a sweater from Ottawa, okay? And you go into a store and it's a clothing store and they only have two sweaters. One sweater says, don't believe the polls. The other sweater says, believe the polls. Which sweater do you buy?
So I buy the Believe the Polls sweater, but I understand if it doesn't fit perfectly. And I'll explain why. So I'm very, very cognizant of the discussion going around. I was in New York in 2016 for the Trump win. And I lived through talking to people around him who had no doubt that they were going to win. And I remember communicating it on air and people almost rolling their eyes when I said that, because they were so convinced based on polling that Hillary was going to win. So I internalize it. I lived through it in the last one. I was all over the States for the last debate, the last election, pardon me. I think in this case, two things can be true at once. I think that the sentiment that the level of enthusiasm for conservative voters is through the roof is true. And it is actually borne out if you dig down into the polling. Like, it's the way we interpret it, the way we present it. It's not the polling itself. They're at 39, 40%, 38, 40%. That is the highest they have been in decades.
You tell a conservative, hey, in a few years, you're going to be at 39%, like 2 years back.
100%.
I'll take that.
Andrew Scheer would have dreamed of days like this, right? Aaron O'Toole would have dreamed of days like this. So they are polling at historic highs. The thing is, so are the Liberals, because not only have they regained the ground they lost, they have completely collapsed the vote for the NDP and the Bloc here more specifically in Quebec. And as a result, plus their vote is more efficient.
Yeah.
So that's why at this juncture, if you take them at face value, they are poised to win. But that's not to take away from a historic level of support for the Conservatives.
The mellifluous voice you're hearing is that of Vassy Kapelos. Of course, she's the host of the Vassy Kapelos show, and she's in town because the debates are happening tonight and tomorrow. So just on that subject, right, there's been, the Conservatives have blown a 25-point lead. They didn't blow it. The NDP just cratered. It's the NDP that's been blowing it.
For the NDP has definitely blown it more than anybody else. I do think that there are valid criticisms of the way in which the Conservatives, just as I felt a few years ago, the Liberals were late to the issue of affordability and the degree to which people cared about it. And so when they finally delivered a message around it, it didn't resonate to the degree they wanted. I have that sense this time too. They were late to the issue of Trump. And so even though they have very clear policies to address it, the rhetoric is what people want to hear, it is failing to resonate to the degree that they would have hoped to in order to stem the sort of slipping of support. But you're right to point out, like, if the NDP didn't collapse, it would be a dogfight to form government
Just
right
put
now.
them, so some polls have them at 7%. I mean, I've laughed at times where
He might lose a seat.
He might lose a seat.
Yeah.
And I've seen national polling where the Bloc is like the same number as the NDP and the Bloc's in one province, right?
Very much so.
So, I look at that and I say, okay, well, it's tough to navigate if the NDP is going to just fall off the map, right? So if you're Pierre Poilievre, what do you do? What do you do in these last 2 weeks?
Well, I think they've made a conscious decision to stick to what they still think will resonate with people who will vote for them. And that is the message around change and the message around affordability. I think that they have made a conscious choice and a strategic decision that they still feel they can motivate enough people and convince them that will prove to be successful for them. It's a gamble because it may not be true.
Yeah.
But I think that ultimately they've decided, like, we'll address the Trump stuff, but we've kind of we're behind on that now. So instead, we're going to focus on the stuff that works for us.
Has it been a mistake that the Conservatives didn't have a better roster? Like, I'm just trying to think of star candidates that's shown up, and I'm like, Ruth Ellen Brasso for the NDP, bigger get than what were the gets for the Conservatives candidate-wise? Like, quality candidate-wise, who were the gets for the Conservatives? I grasp at trying to find one.
Well, and I think the bigger issue is if there is a vulnerability for the Conservatives, it's like people feel they have to take a chance. They believe in change, but like, can I park my vote here because I'm not sure about this Poilievre guy? I have my doubts, right? And to your point, if he had been surrounded with a stellar front bench, which is perhaps a bit, I don't use the word mainstream like loosely, but like somebody that's sort of reassures the public that is feeling nervous about taking a chance, that could have really aided him in delivering the message, you can take this risk.
The notes I get about like Jean Charest on the text line, of course,
right.
we're in Quebec or Montreal, and especially the Anglo-Quebecer loves Jean Charest.
Yeah.
And the notes I get, I wish, Jean Charest and that kind of thing. I mean, not necessarily as leader of the party. I mean, that ship sailed long ago, and Pierre Poilievre had a decisive victory. But they kind of want someone.
There wasn't outreach like that, though. That's a failure of the campaign. Like, there wasn't, I heard they just called Jean Charest the day before they called, for example, Doug Ford.
Yeah.
That they weren't making, they sort of weren't making those overtures to widen the tent that does provide that reassurance. And that could prove at the end to be a vulnerability.
And then again, it's like, okay, criticize, and I'm criticizing, but again, they're at 39%, 40%, a historic high.
Yeah.
In front of you is the National Post. And just to wrap up here, Vassy, there's an editorial cartoon of Mark Carney Carney, and it's he's walking into basically a gigantic hole around a construction site, and the warning's in French, so he's trying to read the French sign, and he's about to fall into the hole. What do you think about tonight and the challenge for Mark Carney in the French debate?
It's a big challenge, and I would say also because Yves-François Blanchet is very talented at debating, and
feisty.
so is Pierre Poilievre, right? I think, and the other thing that his vulnerability that I think has not been a help to him is the touchiness. Like, dude does not like to be our prime minister. I will say respectfully, but he does not like to be pushed, right? And he gets kind of prickly about it when that happens. And guess who loves to give the bait is Blanchet and Poilievre, both of whom will have to watch that too, right? Because I don't know if people are looking for angry at this moment, but he's going to have to be very careful about taking that bait, particularly in French, in a language you're not comfortable in. That pushback could come across very differently.
I would totally just get his titles wrong. So I remember when the reporter from the Globe and Mail asked him, and he called him the vice chair.
No,
and he's like, chair. I was chair. And he corrected him. And he corrected him twice. I'd be like, when you were assistant manager at Brookfield,
Can you imagine? Wouldn't go over well.
To poke the bear. Okay, Vassy, you have a show to get prepared for. It's almost 11:17. You go and prepare for your fantastic show, which is coming up in 43 minutes.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Vassy Kapelos, host of The Vassy Kapelos Show.